All right, so to continue on, I jumped ahead a little bit, but tomorrow when we talk about Bootstrap, this is what you're going to see. XS, SM, MD, LG. There actually is another one that's XLG. So, for instance, if you were trying to project something on a screen, all right, I know that I had a friend, he had, I don't know what it was, but it was like, I can't even tell you the right dimensions. I think it was 12 feet by 12 feet. He literally had a motion picture screen, basically, and he projected all of his stuff on there. But XS, notice, screens less than 768 pixels wide. SM, tablets, up to 768 pixels. MD, small laptops, up to 992 pixels. LG, greater than or equal to 1200 pixels. So why am I telling you that? Because when you start to go in and look at media queries, you want to be able to say when your viewport reaches a certain size, you want it to change. All right. So in other words, as you shrink something down, you'll want it. You might want the font smaller. You might want something that's taking up 12 columns to now take up 2 columns, or whatever. All right. So that's what this is about. So the author says here, when you develop a website that uses responsive web design to provide for various screen sizes, you'll want to make sure it configures the viewport appropriately for different devices. I showed you the viewport. All right. They talk about it in here, and here's what they mention. We've looked at these a little bit already. Not a lot, but a little bit. All right. You can work with width, you can work with height. But again, to make something truly responsive, you want to make sure that when you do that, you're using relative units of measure and not absolute units of measure. All right. So if you look right here, now they're explaining. This is that same line that we've looked at. All right. And as it says in here, you should set the width property of the content to device width, which means I want to be able to use the maximum width available depending upon what device I'm using to look at this page. You should set the initial scale property to 1, which means I also want to use 100% of that. There are other things that can be added into this. For instance, there's a zoom feature. You might want to set that up to no, or you might want to set it up to yes. Depending on the website, you may or may not want to let people zoom in and out, depending on what it is the site is about. So this is really the first time in here that we're looking at something that could be construed as being code. All right, this kind of is programming. Now, it's not mandatory that you do this, but it is considered convention, and I'm going to ask that you follow the convention. Media queries go at the bottom of your CSS file. Everybody hear that? It's just that's commonly the way that it's done. All right. When you do this, it starts with, as it says here, an @media selector followed by a media type. What does that mean? Well, let's look at an example. When you set this up, you can set max width, you can set min width, you can set them both. So if you look at this first one, a media query that checks that the viewport is 767 pixels or less. All right. Literally, if you come in and you start shrinking your window down, and with some browsers you can do it better than others, etc., it gets down to about, I think it's 244 pixels wide. All right. There's no device that I know of other than, I suppose, if you had a really old flip phone, I suppose that something might be that narrow. All right. Do you even want to support something like that with a website? How easy is it going to be for somebody on a little flip phone, that literally has a screen that's much smaller than this, to be able to see your website? Do you want to support that or not? I don't know. All right. This next one here, again, that's kind of programming. Because what you're saying is the max width is 480, I'm sorry, the minimum width is 480 pixels. The maximum width is 767 pixels. So anything that falls within that range, whatever you put underneath there, all right, you're going to see how to use this in just a minute. All right, those media queries would pertain if it was that size. Again, how do you learn this stuff? You learn this stuff by doing it. So here, as it says, here are some common media queries for responsive design. All right. So notice tablet landscape and desktop layout, 960 pixels and above. All right. Literally, you'd say 960 or more. All right. Tablet portrait, 768 to 959. All right. There's different things that are in here. And there are recommended sizes that you use. Again, when you use Bootstrap, you don't have to worry about putting the numbers in. You say SM, XS, etc. All right, and it gauges it based on those numbers. So when you're using mobile first, 479 pixels or less. That would be, as it says, for a phone in portrait mode. All right, 480 to 767. All right, mobile landscapes would go there. Then you've got tablets, etc. You can read all that stuff yourselves. All right. As it says, one standard technique is to start with queries for larger devices and work your way down. That's pretty much how it's typically done. All right. You don't want to do that. You can go in the other direction, start from the smallest, and work your way up. It really and truly does not matter when you do that. All right. So that's pretty much it as an intro to responsive design. And this chapter here ends with talking about the Slick Nav plugin. One thing I want to show you, if you look just for a second up here, let's see. You may have seen this in the past. It used to be, for example, if you wanted to use certain things in a website, maybe Adobe or something like that. That's not a good example. But sometimes you'd get a message that would literally come up on your web page that said, your computer does not contain this software. Click here and we'll download it for you. That's a plugin. All right. Today it's typically much easier than that. You've got stuff like Google Fonts. We're going to get into that when we talk about the font chapter. But where you just go out to Google Fonts and pick the one you want. You add 2 or 3 lines of code and boom, anybody can use it. All right. But when we get into talking about jQuery, you'll notice there's a plugin registry. Now, if I start adding here, that's over 1,000, so that's maybe 1,400, 1,600. That's over 2,000. There's somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 built-in plugins. What these plugins are is there are things that people have written that you can use. Why would you want to do that as opposed to doing it yourself? Somebody else wrote it, which means they should have at least already tested it. And if you go out, for instance, let's say that I want a form plugin. So I go out over here. All right. And you start looking, if something where they got forks and watches, etc. If you look at one and they're both 0, it's probably either brand new or probably it stinks. It's not very good. We kind of did this before, if you remember when we were in Adam, we worked with packages, and I had you download a couple packages, and the ones you downloaded by and large had several thousand to several million people who had downloaded the same thing. The same kind of thing right here. So the reason I bring that up is it says when you develop a responsive design, you need to provide for menus that can be responsive. All right? And there's different ways of doing this. One is to use a jQuery plugin called SlickNav. So if you want to use that, as it says there, you can go out and download the zip file out to GitHub. Then unzip it, and then you're able to use it in your program. All right? Tomorrow morning, when we come in and we start working with Bootstrap, I'm going to show you 2 or 3 different ways that you can do this. All right? And we'll talk about the advantages or the disadvantages of doing it one way as opposed to doing it another way. So the author says you must include a script element for jQuery. As we start working in here, especially when we get into the second half of the course, you're going to be using jQuery. Now, a menu that's like this is pretty much, at least, pretty much the equivalent of what a Bootstrap menu would look like. And if you go, well, that looks bad, why isn't it horizontal? It would be horizontal, but when it reaches a certain size, this is what you're going to see. That thing right there, not the word menu, but this, that's called a hamburger menu. And when you click on that, it opens it so it looks like this. That's what you're going to be doing tomorrow. All right? Again, most of it is very automated. You just have to add a bunch of classes. That's all. So they give you the code that you'd use. And if you look right here, you want a little bit of a prelude, so to speak. In the second half, not right away, but eventually that's what you're going to be writing. All right? People look at that and like, I have no idea what that means. Document.ready means once the web page is loaded. Literally is what it means. All right? So once the web page is loaded, rather, what you're saying is we want to take SlickNav and we want to add it to our menu. That's it. The syntax is a little weird on here because jQuery is a little weird, but it's unbelievably powerful. It's just a JavaScript library, so we'll go through JavaScript first, and then we'll look at jQuery. Not even really a whole heck of a lot that you have to put in there as far as code. You set this up the same way, and it's just a little bit of CSS you have to put in once you set that up. All right, the chapter ends, as you see right here, a web page that uses responsive design. Look familiar? This is the one you've seen before. But notice now they're showing it, this is how it would look on a laptop, and there's how it looks in a phone in both portrait and landscape orientations. All right. The idea again is going to be that when you're working on this leavemeathome.com website, that by the time you do your next test, that's basically how it'll look. And you'll be, you can basically just bring it up on a phone and find out whether or not it looks like that. You say, well, how do I put that on my phone? We're not going to get into that right now, but you can also go and bring in that Chrome extension that I talked to you about and basically have it simulate or emulate an iPhone or whatever. We don't do a lot with the HTML stuff where we actually hook it up to our phone. You can do that. When we get into when it's spring of 2020, if you've got an Android phone, as soon as you start developing games, you're going to be able to copy them immediately to your phone and play them right away. All right. And if you raise your hand and go, what about iPhones? No, it doesn't work that way. Because Apple's got a closed architecture. You got to do a lot more in order to get it to work. All right. Plus, we don't teach iPhone development here. So they give you the HTML, and you're going to find when you look at it, that's just a nav. All right. But notice it says nav ID equal mobile menu. So that's the way that you'll set it up in your CSS if you're looking at it on a mobile device. Okay. And how are they going to do that? Eventually they're going to have some media queries in here to handle it. And I think that is just about it. All right. Now, one last thing, and then I'm finished for today, but I want to show you this. First of all, I saved this. I'm going to send you this in just a minute. All right. That's the first thing. The second thing is on this homework page that I gave you, and this was on me. I apologize for not doing it. Please write this on the handout I gave you. Due Wednesday, 10/3/2018. As you asked, when's this due? When's that due? It is due 10/3. That is 1 week from Wednesday. So approximately 9 days from today. All right? So that's the first thing. This hasn't changed. Number 1 didn't change. Number 2 didn't change. Number 3 didn't change. Number 4 didn't change. But we are going to go over chapters 8, 9, and 10 shape up. Yeah, I'd like you to keep turning those in. Like I said, the main rationale behind that is A, to give you some points, and B, then if something like that appears on a test, you've got a reference that you can go back to and take a look at. This is not on the handout I gave you. All right, so number 5 would be also turn in chapters 8 through 10 shape up. You want to add that yourselves, you can. All right. Then starting tomorrow, we are going to do a series of exercises as, we are going to do a series of exercises as a class. All right. There will be about 3 bootstrap exercises that we're going to do. The first one will be very simplistic. It won't do much, and you look at it and go, this is kind of stupid. But then we'll either take that one and add to it or create another one that's similar to it. So the first one that we create that won't have much there, that'll be worth 20 points. You'll have to turn it in. This is the homework for chapters 7, 8, and 9, or 7 through 10, really. All right, everybody got that? Now, somebody said there was a thing out on the thing that said chapter 7 stuff due. You know what stuff is due. All right, anything we've done, any shape ups that we've done, we also did that box exercise where you had to make the different size divs, etc. I don't think there's been anything since then that's been assigned. All right, so we will do that first. That'll be worth 20 points. Then we will create a simple website as a class. That will be worth 30 points. We should be able to do those, hopefully, both tomorrow fairly quickly. And I don't mean like in 10 minutes, but I'm hoping around the time by now that we're able to do that. All right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to start working on your resume. And I'll use mine as an example. All right. And we will work with that one. You can, feel free, and I want you to eventually get my name out of there. And I'm just going to put in the school's address, etc. But I want you to put your stuff in there. And a very important thing about this, okay, if this summer you decide, I'd like to kind of look for an internship. There's a web design place that's out on I-70, and there is one. I'd like to stop in there and see if they'd like anybody, me to work, even if they wouldn't pay me. Well, if you're going to do that, all right, then when you're doing your resume and you put in your email address, do not use Rankins. It should be a professional email address. All right? And I remember one of my fellow instructors, not here, but at the school I used to work at, they were showing me, they said, geez, would you hire her? I said, why? And her email was pixieprincess, 1993@gmail.com. You don't want addresses like that. That's not how you want people to remember you. All right? For instance, I don't have this one, but my one here is jpscott@rankin.edu. It's also my charter one. All right? But that's not bad. I could check and see, for example, is there jeffreypscott@gmail.com? That's professional. Sometimes they'll say that's taken. Would you like jeffreypscott037@gmail.com? That's not bad. But you shouldn't have something like, I'm the Hulk@gmail.com. Whatever you put in there should be professional. And I don't care if you like football. It shouldn't be like gridirongladiator@gmail.com. It should be something professional that ideally has your name in it. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm going to expect. And eventually, when you do your portfolio, all right, which is going to be due the last day of class, December 20th, all right, about 3 months from now, you will be linking to that Bootstrap resume on your portfolio. All right, so we're starting the actual portfolio work now. All right. Now, if you're interested, if you're not a problem. But if you're interested, you go, okay, we're going to do this tomorrow. How would I get started? You can go out to getbootstrap.com. I mentioned this before. But what's cool about this site is if you go out there and you go down, for example, and I go to if you look here, if I click examples, okay, I can click right there and I can say, well, this one looks kind of cool. So there's carousel. I guess I don't know if that's carousel. I'm just going to click right there. Boom. There it is. Then I can, if I want to, I can right mouse click on it, choose view page source, Control A, Control C to copy it, open up my my editor of choice, paste it in, save it. I'm just going to call it, Bootstrap 1.html. All right, there it is. Run it. And, well, so why isn't it working? Because I don't have hooked up to it the CSS file. So literally all I would have to do, okay, and I'm going to show you this tomorrow, so don't worry about writing it down or anything. But right here, it doesn't like this, it doesn't like this, it doesn't like this, and I'm going to show you how to get around those tomorrow. All right, and someplace up here at the top somewhere in the header, it's referencing up here in the head section. It doesn't have this file. So I'm going to show you how to get that file. Again, I'm going to show you at least 3 different ways that you can start your project. All right, and it's like, which is the best? No, that's like saying which of your kids is your favorite. All right, it doesn't really pass the smell test. So we'll look at that tomorrow. That's where we're going to start. So when you get in here tomorrow, just have your machine on, because that's all we're doing tomorrow. All right, if we get it done early, great. And if we don't, then we don't. But we're going to be just coding up Bootstrap from the minute we start class at 8:05. All right. Questions on anything either that I handed out to you or that I've said today that don't make sense? All right, so you've got about an hour and 20 minutes to work on homework.